Congratulations, you won.
A long, long time ago, in the year 2002, the zombie movie genre was flipped on its head by the release of the film 28 Days Later, a masterfully crafted cinematic experience with the ability to transport its viewers into another world, one that is bleak, isolating, and incredibly dangerous. It told the story of the Rage virus, a ridiculously infectious disease that turned human beings into furious, blood-spewing monsters with nothing but murder on their minds. The infection spread all across the UK in less than a month and transformed it into a hellish wasteland. Fast forward to 2007 and a sequel comes out, aptly named 28 Weeks Later. This film continues the story of the last, albeit with a completely new set of characters. In this film, we learn that over the past 28 weeks, all of the infected people on the island have starved to death. And even though there is still much reconstruction to be done, people are being moved back into their now infection-free homeland. It goes about as well as you'd expect, with the virus resurfacing, resulting in the infection and death of quite a few people. That's the basic premise of the movie, and with that being said, I have to admit that I don't have a whole lot to say about this film. I was inspired by 28 Days Later, and because of that, I had a lot of commentary to add to the conversation, 28 minutes worth to be exact. With 28 Weeks Later, though, I just don't feel quite that way, so my rant this time probably won't be as long.
Psych! That's the wrong number!
This isn't a bad movie by any means, but it's definitely not the shining example in filmmaking that 28 Days Later is. Still, there are a few things about this film that really do make it stand out, and I'd like to talk about those right now. So, sit back, relax, and get ready for 8 things I like about 28 Weeks Later, along with a few things that I don't. It probably goes without saying, but spoilers ahead. Number 1 is the opening scene of the movie. This scene takes place on the island, like during the outbreak. I'm not sure when the scene takes place relative to what happens in the first movie, but I mean, it's gotta be around that same time, because I mean, these people are holed up in this cabin out in the middle of the countryside, and there are still so many infected around. It's kind of crazy to see, because in the first movie they were in areas that, you know, used to be fairly populated, but in this scene, I mean, they are out on the countryside. The houses are very far apart, and there's still infected everywhere. It's kind of crazy. But anyway, there are about 6 or 7 people who are holed up in this cottage, but you really only need to worry about 2 of them, those being Alice and Donald Harris. As far as they go, they're really just like a typical couple, just a typical married couple, just trying to get by. Obviously, they're in a weird situation, but I mean, I'm sure that's who they were before. One notable thing about them is that they have 2 kids who aren't there on the island. I forget the exact reason they were shipped away, as some sort of school thing, but their kids are not currently in the UK, and they are like really happy about this. And, you know, on my first watch, I thought to myself, oh, of course they're happy about it. Their kids aren't with them here with all these freaking zombies running around. Of course they're happy. But then it occurred to me, I mean, in order for them to be happy about their kids not being on the island with them, they must somehow know that the rest of the world is not affected by the virus. Because, I mean, if they had it in their heads that the rest of the world was also in the same situation, then, you know, they would have no reason to be happy about their kids not being with them. So that just kind of struck me as weird. I don't think they ever explain how they would know that the rest of the world isn't affected by it. Maybe they've seen planes or something. I mean, I guess they would have to have seen planes in order for this to make sense. Something like that. Maybe the government even like airdropped letters or something saying the rest of the world is okay, we're gonna extract you. But I mean, they never show that happening. So, you know, in my mind, it kind of seems like a plot hole. But anyway. So they're all just kind of chilling in the house. They have all the windows and everything covered up with all sorts of stuff, wood and paper and whatnot. There's no looking out and there's nothing looking in. They are just completely holed up in this dark house. But at some point, they hear a knock at the door. When they hear the voice of the person outside, they realize, oh God, it's a little boy. And they debate not opening the door, but eventually Alice convinces Don to open the door. And when he does so, I really like this shot of him opening the door because, like I said, they're in this dark house. Who knows how long they've been holed up in this dark house. they open the door and like they're all like blinded by the light, and like you can see the contrast between the inside of the house and the boy and what's behind him. And it's just, I like that they had that little attention to detail in there. But anyway, them bringing the kid inside actually doesn't really result in anything. It's kind of a tense scene. It's like, oh, we just got this kid inside. Are we gonna be fucked now? I hope none of the infected saw us. But it's actually fine. He just eats, and it's all good. But it is not all good for long, because one of the people that they were originally holed up with actually looks outside for a second because she's looking for her boyfriend who's missing. She like peels a little bit back and looks outside, and she comes face to face with one of the infected, and like, oh god, now they know we're in here. So the infected person, rather unrealistically I might add, bursts their hand through the window and the wood that was nailed up against it, and just like drags her arm out and starts biting it. And I love the shot of the girl looking out of the crack at herself being bitten, because you can just, she's acting with her eyes essentially. Like, she's only acting with her eyes in this shot. And she does it really well. You can really see the fear in her eyes, and it's just like, oh, good job. She did a good job. But anyway, this is the part in the scene where like, oh my god, shit's going down. They burst through the window and start eating everybody and killing everybody. And Dawn and Alice and the kid, they all run upstairs. And this is probably the most controversial scene in the whole movie, I would think. Here's basically what goes down. The kid runs off into one of the rooms and like sort of hides, and then Alice goes in there after him, and then Dawn goes after Alice, and they all end up in the same room. So they're all in this bedroom. The kid runs to one side of the bed, and Alice runs over there too, and Dawn is like, come on, let's go, leave the kid, let's fucking go, we have to leave right now. And then the door opens, and some infected are in the room now. And Dawn has a choice to make, because he is really the only one who has a chance to escape in this moment. Alice and this kid are kind of stuck where they are. But Dawn has a chance to either stay and fight the infected and maybe save his wife and this kid, or he can bolt. And he chooses to bolt. And I mean, it results in like he bolts and he goes out the window and he runs away. And it results in Alice and presumably the kid being attacked by the infected, And I don't know. I'm sort of on the fence here. Because on one hand, it's like the honorable thing for him to do would have been to stay and like either push the infected out the door and shut the door and put the bed in front of the door, or like fight the infected, or maybe even just distract them long enough for Alice and the kid to get out or something. But I feel like, I don't know, I mean, there were countless infected in the house, and one person going up against all those infected is like pretty much fucking guaranteed to die. He definitely didn't do the honorable thing, but I feel like he did the logical thing. So I'm kind of on the fence here. Part of me thinks like, oh, he's an asshole, he should have stayed and helped his wife. But on the other hand, I mean, he almost definitely would have died. And honestly, she probably would have died too. I mean, if he stayed to fight the zombies, they probably all would have died. So it's either like all three of them die, or he gets away and they die. It's kind of like the trolley problem, I don't know. There's really no good outcome, but it's just kind of a weird situation for him to be in, and he made the choice to run. It does characterize him a little bit. This is a big character moment for him. We see that he's the kind of person where in a tough situation like this, you can frame it in multiple different ways. You can either say this guy is selfish, or you can say this guy is logical. Fight or flight, he chose flight, and that characterizes him a little bit. But anyway, he runs away, and this is when the In the House in a Heartbeat really starts to pick up, and he's like running off, and the zombies and stuff are running up over the hills, and he looks back and he sees Alice get ripped to the side by one of the zombies. He gets in a boat and like churns around a little bit, and eventually he gets away. And as he's, this is a really high stakes situation. I'm sure that he is just like fight or flight, heart pumping. And as he's riding away, he finally really got away and he escaped. He's sitting there. All he says is, "Oh shit! Oh 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 shit!" And I really, really like that. I really, really like that, because like they could have gone a different way and had him like say some dramatic bullshit, but instead he's just like, "Oh shit! Oh shit! Oh shit!" And I feel like that's what you would fucking say in that situation. Like your heart is pumping, you thought you thought like, oh shit, I'm fucking gonna die, and then you don't die, and it's like, what Like, oh shit, oh shit. I feel like that's what I would say. And that's pretty much the end of the scene. So I really, really like this scene. There's just one other scene I'm going to talk about that's probably going to take up a good bit of the video. But like this scene and that scene I'm going to talk about later are going to take up most of this video because those are the things I have the most to say about. And one reason that I really like it is because it has the feel of the first movie. Like it has that small personal feeling. Like this isn't a huge crowd of people being overrun by a huge crowd of zombies. This is like 6 people being terrorized by a crowd of zombies. It has that sort of isolating feel that the first movie had. The second thing that I really like about this movie is the fact that Dawn gets infected, and pretty early on in the movie too. You know, a lot of movies, it seems like their main characters are just untouchable. One franchise that I really, really like is the Jurassic Park / Jurassic World movies. I really like those movies, but I think my main major gripe with that franchise is just the main characters are so untouchable. It wasn't so much of an issue in the first, second, and third movies, but Jurassic World in particular, they are obsessed with these scenes where the dinosaur's creeping up on somebody, it's like standing right in front of them, about to strike, or like it's stalking them and it's about to find them. But then something will get in the way to stop it. You know, like someone's about to die, some main character is about to die, but then the dinosaur gets distracted or killed or whatever, and the person ends up surviving. And I mean, doing this once or twice is no big deal, but they do it so much. I know that they're not going to die. I know that you're not going to kill your main characters because you don't do that. You don't kill your main characters. It would be cool and it would add to the movie if you did, but I know you're not going to do that. So when I see Chris Pratt getting stalked by a dinosaur, I'm not worried that it's going to kill him because something is going to get in the way, inevitably. But in this movie, they don't do that so much. In this movie, they really don't do that. There are a lot of main characters that die in this movie, and Dawn is the first, I believe, the first one, yeah. Because spoiler alert, the mom isn't dead. She's infected. She got bitten, but she was infected, but she's not dead. And she's not even a zombie either, because she's, like, immune to it, but she's still a carrier. And I'll talk about that more later. But he ends up going to see her in quarantine, and he kisses her. And he gets infected from that. And that is how the second outbreak happens. And I really like the camera thing they do with him where they sort of put it over his shoulder, so it's almost like we're seeing his perspective as he's going around biting people. I think that's pretty cool. But anyway, yeah, I like the fact that they're not afraid to infect main characters. The third thing I like about this movie kind of ties in with the number 2, but it's the fact that they keep that feeling that the first movie had, that this virus is incredibly dangerous and infectious. When it starts to spread throughout the safe zone, it spreads just as fast as ever and is just as dangerous as ever. This movie had the potential to really downplay the virus. They could have gone a different direction with it and made it to where it didn't seem like such a big deal. But no, I mean, this virus devastates the safe zone pretty quickly. And they really keep that feeling, and I like that. And they even have like some cool imagery. They end up firebombing the city at one point to try to kill the infected. And in the process, they end up destroying the blood samples from Alice, sort of symbolizing that, oh, you're not going to fucking find a cure. Because the reason that they had her blood in a vial anyway was like so they could study it and find a cure. But it's like, no, you're not going to fucking find a cure. Those vials breaking and all in the blood samples being lost sort of symbolizes how hopeless it is to try to fight this virus because it will always come back. Number 4 is the dynamic between the father, the mother, and the kids. The kids' names are Tammy and Andy, by the way, a son and a daughter. And I don't know, it's a very weird dynamic that they have. I mean, we talked about the opening scene where the father basically abandons the mother, and then he meets up with his kids, and he sort of fudges the truth a little bit. He says like, "Oh, I saw them biting her. There's nothing I could do. I had to run." And he kind of sort of implies that he like kind of saw her die. He doesn't explicitly say, "I saw her die," but he kind of implies it. And the kids are really sad, and like you can really tell that they really love each other. Like he loves the kids, and the kids love him, and they're obviously sad that their mother died, but they're also really happy that he's alive. It sort of gets turned all upside down when the kids leave the safe zone and find their mother, because that's how they find the mother. And they sort of confront him about it. They're like, you told us that she was dead. And he's like, no, I didn't. I just said that she got attacked. And they're kind of mad at him. And then he goes to see her, and then that's when he kisses her, and he gets infected. And it's a really weird dynamic between them. They love each other so much, but this really awkward thing happened between the mom and dad, and they have to sort of work that out. But they don't really have the opportunity to work it out because he gets infected and then he kills her. And this scene is kind of important to me because obviously the rage virus turns people into rage-filled monsters. But I don't know if you remember in the first movie, there was that soldier that the other soldiers tied up when he became infected. And when he gets released, he goes like straight into killing the soldiers. And I feel like he would have done that no matter who he was, but it did feel a little personal. And I see that again in this scene because Dawn, like right after he becomes infected, he's not even paying any attention to her. But then she like calls out to him. She's like, Dawn! And that's exactly what she said to him as he was running away in the cottage. And then he has this little flashback to in the cottage when she said that. And then he gets really angry and like pounces on her and kills her. Obviously, he is outraged because he has the rage virus, but it also feels a little personal because he's taking all the pent-up emotions that he has over that day and like it's being channeled through the rage virus into his attack on her. And he kills her in a very brutal way. Like he pushes his thumbs into her eyes, just like in the first movie when Jim did that to the soldier that was keeping Selena hostage. So it's also kind of like an homage to that scene, which I appreciate. So anyway, yeah, number 4 is the dynamic between the family members. Number 5 is the fact that the camera quality still isn't quite HD. One of the things I praised about the first movie was that the camera quality was not so great, and like in a good way. And I think it really adds to the atmosphere. Like if you want to know exactly how I feel about that, you can go watch my 28 Days Later video. But in a nutshell, the poor quality sort of adds to the atmosphere by leaving stuff to your imagination. And this is 2007, the sequel came out. The cameras they're not, nearly as quote unquote poor quality as the ones in the first movie, but they're like closer to HD, but they're still not quite HD, and I can appreciate that. Okay, so number 6 is another really big one for me. This in my first point when I was talking about the opening scene, and I mentioned another scene that I was going to spend a lot of time talking about. This is the one that I was talking about, and this is probably my favorite part about the whole movie. It's the scene where the son Andy and Tammy are in this surging crowd. Like the outbreak is going on, they're in this surging crowd and they're trying to get away. And this scene sort of recreates, in the first movie there was Mark who had a little monologue about the last time he saw his mom and his sister and his dad. And this scene kind of recreates that in a way. Not beat by beat, but it's, there's a lot of similarities, and it's kind of hard to believe that it wasn't intentional. So let me explain what I mean. Mark, in the first movie, he describes how he was in this crowd with his mom, sister, and dad, and he loses his grip on his sister's hand. And then he's like going through this crowd, and after a while, he starts walking on people. Like he looks down and like, oh my God, I'm walking on people because people are being trampled. And then he ends up having to climb over people because there's just so many people surging through this big crowd. And then he gets on top of this kiosk and he looks down and he sees his dad and he says like, oh, his face. He doesn't say what his face looked like, and I really appreciate that, but he implies that whatever he saw on his dad's face was horrific. Not beat by beat like I said, but pretty much that exact thing happens to Andy the son. He's going through the crowd.
Crowd was surging.
He loses his grip on his sister's hand.
I lost my grip on my sister's hand.
He ends up climbing over people and he looks down at everybody.
Remember, the ground was soft. I looked down and I was standing on all these people. No one could run. All you could do was climb over more people. So I did that. I climbed. Looking down, you couldn't tell which faces were infected and which weren't.
He ends up seeing his dad's infected face.
And I saw my dad. His face.
As I was watching this movie for the first time, I thought back to Mark's monologue. I was like, this is that scene. You know, I really liked how they, in the first movie, they didn't show what happened, and we just listened to him describe it because it left it to their imagination. But seeing it in this movie was really cool, and just the fact that it feels like an homage. You know, it's possible that they didn't mean for this to parallel Mark's monologue, but it's kind of hard for me to believe that just because of how similar it is. And it's just such a cool thing. We basically see that scene recreated in real time here with Andy. And that is my favorite part about 28 Weeks Later. It's so cool how they recreated that scene. Number 7 is sort of similar to number 2 with Dawn getting infected. Number 7 is the fact that the son gets infected, and he actually gets infected from his dad biting him. And this is sort of a small one for me. I don't know. One thing I don't like about a lot of action, horror, thriller movies is that they're so afraid to let anything happen to a kid. You know, like, no kids are dying, no kids are getting hurt. Like, there's these huge catastrophes going on with thousands of people dying, but God forbid anything happened to a kid because this is a movie. It's not as if I want to watch Child Death, the movie, but you know, it kind of takes me out of the movie when they're so afraid to have anything happen to a kid, you know, it just makes the movie seem less realistic. So the fact that the son gets bitten and infected really goes a long way with me. And it turns out he's actually immune like his mother was. So he's a carrier now, which, you know, obviously that sucks. He can never kiss anybody. But at least he's not a zombie. Number 8 is another small one. It's the ending shots, like the final shots of the movie. I believe it's the final shots of the movie, but it shows the virus getting off of the island and into mainland Europe, specifically Paris. And I don't know, there's just something about this scene, like we see these infected people running towards something, we see a bunch of people running, and it sort of has little glimpses of the Eiffel Tower here and there. It's like, oh, what was that? It looked familiar. But then it shows it very clearly. This is the Eiffel Tower. And it's like, oh my God, the virus is on the mainland. It's just like, whoa, it's just like hits you like a ton of bricks. It sets up a sequel so well. It's like, oh, I can't wait for 28 months later, you know? So yeah, I mean, that ending shot of the Eiffel Tower really sets up the sequel, and I really like it. Hello everyone, this is Future Alec. I bet you didn't expect to hear from me today, but here I am. I want to mention, before I get into the things I didn't like section, that throughout the course of making this video, I've gained a new respect for this movie. I am still of the mind that it's not quite as good as the first one, but I think, you know, I like this movie more now that I've created this video than I did before. And I also have a deeper understanding of why I like the first one more. But I also do want to mention just a couple more things I like about this movie, just real quick. I really like the sniper scene, like where they say abandon selective targeting because the place is being overrun and they can't tell who's infected and who's not, so they start shooting everybody. And just the psychological implications of what must be going on in the sniper's head while they're doing that. I also think this movie is really well shot. I like the cinematography in this movie, really well done. I do want to mention, in the things I don't like section, one of the things I'm going to mention is that I feel like the characters in this film don't really have much of an arc. Like, there's really nobody that learns anything. But while I was making this video, I thought to myself, you know, it's kind of thematically appropriate that no one has an arc. Because this particular movie isn't about growth. It's not about learning anything. It's not about growing as people. It's about devastation and the loss of everything. You know, the world as we know it is being upended and destroyed. So, you know, it makes sense that there was less of an opportunity to learn and grow in this new, dangerous world. But like I was saying, I think I figured out why I like the first movie more. And, you know, I really like the scenes in this movie where the outbreak is happening, like where Andy is going through the crowd and everything. That's a really cool scene. But, so it is nice to see the outbreak happening. You know, in the first movie, the outbreak has already happened and we're seeing the aftermath. But in this movie, we're, like, seeing the outbreak happen. And that's really cool, and I like that. But I think it would be cooler if it was, like, initial outbreak stuff. You know, I'm more into initial outbreak. And this is a secondary outbreak. So it's not as if these people are like, what the hell is going on? They know exactly what's going on, you know. They're caught by surprise, but they know what they're being caught by surprise by. They know what the virus is. I am more interested in sudden drastic change, you know, like people's lives being dramatically changed very quickly, you know, like in the first movie when Selena and Mark are talking about what it was like when the virus first started emerging. They're like, oh, you know, it started with rioting and like people were really angry, and then you would see it on your TV and we saw all these news reports, but eventually it wasn't on the TV anymore. It was coming through your windows and coming through your doors, and it was just chaos. And I like that. That is the kind of thing that really interests me. It's just people are going through their daily lives, and then all of a sudden, bam, the world has changed in a day. That is the kind of thing that really interests me. So I think that's part of why I like the first movie more. I like scenes and movies that make me think, damn, what must it feel like to be in that situation, you know? And, you know, I would encourage anybody who is into film or anything like that to just maybe take notes next time you watch a film. I mean, I'm not a professional film analyst, obviously, but, you know, I just started watching movies that I like, and I started taking notes, and I had enough notes to make a video about it. I mean, even if you don't plan on making a video, I would recommend taking a deeper dive into a film that you like, you know, because I've learned a lot about what I like from films from making these videos. So one of my points in this little aside is that I have gained a newfound respect for this movie, even though I still like the first movie more. I could do without the soldiers quipping and stuff in this movie. The commander dude is kind of a caricature character, you know, he's just like, there's nothing really interesting about him. He's just a commander. He's just some commander. And he acts exactly how you would expect a commander to act. There's really no depth to him. Although, I will admit, there is one scene, like right after the firebombing, you can just see on his face that he is like, oh fuck, I really fucked up. All these people died and it was for nothing because the outbreak is still happening. I like that. So there is a little bit of depth to him. It's kind of the same with the scientist lady. Like, she's kind of one note. She's like, I am a scientist. I care about science and finding a cure. We need to protect these kids because I'm a scientist and I care about finding a cure. I don't know, she seems kind of one note. The helicopter scene where the blade chops up all those zombies, I think that's gratuitous. I don't like it. In the tunnel scene with the night vision scope, I don't know, it seems like a really, really fucking stupid idea to go through a pitch black train tunnel with nothing but a night vision scope. You can make the argument that they had no choice, but there had to have been a better option than that. It was kind of stupid. Those are the kind of things that hold me back from saying this is an awesome movie. You know, it's a really good movie with one really. It's a really good movie, but those are the kind of things that hold me back from saying it's a masterpiece like the first one. But anyway, with that being said, let's move on to the things I don't like section. Now that I've told you a bunch of things I don't like about the movie, let's move into the things I don't like section. So now I'd like to talk about a couple of things that I don't particularly like about this movie. Number one is, it doesn't feel, I've already mentioned this before, I'll just briefly say it again. It doesn't feel as personal as the first one. You know, the tone isn't as isolating, but I will say that I get it. You know, like this is a movie about the virus coming back and affecting a huge number of people and ultimately getting off the island. So in a sense, they really couldn't have had it be small and personal like the first one. Like in the first movie, for the majority of the film, you're led to believe that the entire world is dead. Like the entire world is infected, the entire world is fucked. So it has this really isolating, we are the last people on Earth sort of vibe. But in this movie, you not only are there thousands of people on the island, but you have the knowledge that the rest of the world is just chilling. I mean, the rest of the world is totally fine while all this is going on. At least, you know, until the end of the movie. But I will say, that last part with the Eiffel Tower does help a lot, because I imagine in the movie 28 months later, the entire world will be fucked, and it will be more of a we're the last people on Earth sort of vibe yet again. But I could also seeing it like just being Europe and everything that is touching Europe by land, you know? Like I can see 28 months later coming out and it hasn't made it to the Americas yet, in like Australia, Greenland, New Zealand. But a much, much larger portion of the world will be affected in 28 months later. So I guess we'll see. We'll see what kind of tone and what kind of vibe 28 months later has. But number two is, I mean, I'm not a professional film analyst or anything. Feel free to call me out for being wrong about this. But it seems to me that the characters in this movie don't really have arcs. There's nobody that really has an arc. The soldier guy, Sergeant, or Private Doyle or whatever, He starts the movie off as like a soldier. I mean, I guess he kind of has an arc, kind of, because in the beginning of the movie he kind of goofs off a lot, and I mean, I don't want to say he doesn't take the job seriously, but I mean, by the end of the movie he's like, he sacrifices himself for the good of the kids and everything. So I don't know. I'm going to talk more about him later, actually. I have like a specific little section just for him. But Don doesn't really have an arc. He doesn't really learn anything. The mom doesn't really have any lines at all. The kids don't really even have an arc either. I mean, they start the movie liking their... I don't know. Like, they start the movie liking their dad, and they end the movie still liking him but being pissed at him. So, I mean, they're definitely different people by the end, I guess, because they've been traumatized. But I wouldn't exactly call that an arc. It doesn't really seem like any of the characters in this movie really learn anything, which isn't necessarily an awful thing. It would have been nice, because in the first movie, Selena, I think, has the best arc in the first movie. Like, she goes from being like this total cynic who thinks the whole world is fucked to, in the end, being like, oh yeah, I guess survival isn't as good as it gets. You know, I have you, Jim, and you've shown me that life can still be beautiful, so I'm a different person now. So, and there's just nothing really like that in 28 Weeks Later. So that's it for the things I don't like section. And I do have one more section, and this is the things that I just kind of noticed section. I don't particularly like these things. I don't particularly dislike these things. I just kind of noticed them. Number one is they play the song In the House in a Heartbeat a lot in this movie. If you're unfamiliar, this is the kind of de facto theme song of this franchise. And it's played in the opening scene of the movie, which I think it works really, really well in the opening scene. But then they just keep playing it. They play it like 4 or 5 times throughout the movie. And they even have this one song that they play at one point that I'm pretty sure isn't in the House in a Heartbeat, but it sounds a lot like in the House in a Heartbeat. So it's like, even when they aren't playing it, they're playing another song that sounds just like it. And it's like, Jesus Christ, I love In the House in a Heartbeat, but geez, find a different song to play. And number 2, this is where I talk about the soldier guy. The characterization of the soldier guy, and when I say the soldier guy, I don't mean the helicopter guy, I mean Doyle. When I first started thinking about him, I was like, oh, this guy seems sort of poorly characterized. He's sort of an odd mix of traits that don't work together. But then the more I started to think about it, the more I started to analyze him, I think he's actually characterized pretty well. In the beginning of the movie, he's like your typical soldier bro, messing around with his fellow soldiers and like making quips and stuff, which I don't particularly like. I don't like it when serious movies have people making little weird quips and stuff. But anyway, so I started off not liking him because it's like, oh god, he's like the sarcastic soldier. He's going to be like a comedy relief, but he's not really. Except for this part, which I actually thought was pretty funny.
You never answered my question about why you left your post.
I don't got that boy on my side.
You got your sights on him, huh? Okay. But anyway, there are several scenes in the movie where he has like these big character defining moments. The first one that I can think of is when the scientist woman and a couple other people and the kids are like stuck in this building and they're trying to get out of the area because the soldiers up top, they've begun shooting civilians and zombies just to contain the infection, and they're like, oh god, if we stay here, we're going to die. We have to get out, but we don't know how to get out. So Doyle comes down and he's like, okay, I can help you get out. So he helps them get out. And I think that, that characterizes him as, he's willing to go against orders to help people. So he's like a selfless guy. It's like, okay, cool. But then there's a scene shortly after where they are eluding snipers, and it's him, the kids, scientist woman, and this random guy, and a couple other people. So they're running on the street, and then they hear these sniper shots, and a couple of people that they're with get shot and they die. So they all take cover. So this guy who is shooting from the rooftops, he obviously is an okay shot. I mean, he literally just killed these people, and then they took cover. So Doyle holds out a mirror to try to see where the guy is, and the guy shoots. I believe this is what happened. He shoots 3 times, and the third one hits the mirror. And then Doyle is like, oh, this guy's no marksman. It took him 3 times to hit the mirror. But the shots are really close together, and it's a tiny-ass mirror, and he does hit it. So it's not as if he's total shit at aiming. I mean, he can shoot okay, and he just killed these people, so it's, it's not like he's a non-threat. But, it is worth noting that this area is about to be firebombed, so they are very pressed for time. They have like 2 minutes to get out. So don't be too hard on him for the plan that he comes up with. But the plan that he comes up with is to send this random guy they're with. He tells him, run out, do a zigzag, and then the sniper will become distracted by this, and I will kill him, and then we can all leave safely. And the guy says, you're trying to use me for bait. And he's like, no, I'm not. I know that he's not going to hit you. He's not going to hit you because he's no marksman. And I'm thinking to myself, Doyle, you are absolutely using this guy for bait. You say he's no marksman because he took 3 shots to shoot your mirror, but he just killed like 2 people a second ago. He is not a non-threat. But anyway, Andy, the kid, ends up running out, and then the soldier kills the sniper guy, and it's all good. In terms of characterization for Doyle, it's just like, I don't know, it's kind of hard for me to, it's kind of a weird thing to analyze, because like, he's obviously showing that he is pragmatic, he is like, we are going to get out of this no matter what, but he is basically sacrificing this guy. Like, he's already been characterized as a guy who goes against orders to help people, and now he is being characterized as someone who is willing to sacrifice one life to save other lives. So just keep that in mind. So the third scene that really characterizes him is later on, the scientist woman, 2 kids, and him, they find a car. The area around them is being gassed, so they get into this car, and they want to like drive away, obviously. And there's this really cool shot of these soldiers coming up with flamethrowers. So it's like, okay, either we start this car and get out of here, or we're gonna die. But in order to start the car, it needs to be pushed a little bit. So Doyle gets out, pushes the car a little bit, they get away, but Doyle dies. He ends up getting burnt up by the flamethrowers. So he's going against orders, he's valuing some lives more than others, but he's also sacrificing his own life. So he seems to value some life and not value other lives. It seems like every time he chooses to devalue one particular life, it is for a reason, though. Like he wants to use that guy as bait for the sniper in order to save these other people, and he devalues his own life in order to save those same people. And also in the beginning of the movie, this is a small thing kind of, but his helicopter buddy is like sleeping in the helicopter, and Doyle comes up and scares him and acts like a zombie. And I think it would have been totally justified for the helicopter guy to up and shoot him at that point. He actually ends up doing it again, even after the helicopter guy says, dude, if you do that again, I might end up shooting you. So it just sort of shows, like, he's even willing to make a joke at the risk of his own life. He's like, I value myself so little that I am willing to risk death just to make a fucking joke. This seems like a guy who really doesn't value his own life, but he does value the lives of some other people. I feel like even that guy who he sent out for bait, he did care about his life, but it's like he sort of did the math, and it's like, okay, either we all stay here and get firebombed, or this guy dies and we all live. But anyway, I mean, I don't know. He turned out to be a more complicated character than I thought he was going to be when I started this video, and I felt like mentioning that. But anyway, that's how I feel about 28 Weeks Later. Like I said, it's not as masterfully crafted as the first film, but it's still pretty good, you know. It's a nice little in-between before 28 Months Later comes out. And by the way, it is not confirmed that 28 Months Later is going to be made and finished and released, but it is confirmed by Danny Boyle that a script has been written and he is interested in directing it. I will say that. I don't know when or if it's going to actually happen, but there is a script. So that's part of the reason why I felt motivated to make this video. But anyway, part of me feels like they could have just skipped 28 Weeks Later and just made 28 Months Later and just condensed the story of 28 Weeks Later into like a 20-minute, like a little 20-minute thing at the beginning of 28 Months Later. So it's just like 28 Months Later opens up and it's like, oh yeah, we tried to move everybody back onto the island, but then there was this woman who was a carrier and everyone got infected and now it's all over the world. Like, I feel like the whole movie can really just be summed up in 5 or 20 minutes, you know, and it could have just been the beginning of 28 Months Later. So it kind of feels like the most important thing this movie does is get the virus off the island. And it kind of feels like 28 Days Later was Rage Virus, the horror movie. And 28 Weeks Later is Rage Virus, the action movie. So I wonder what 28 Months Later is going to lean more toward. I feel like it's going to be like a mix of both. I really hope it's a mix of both, leaning towards more horror than action. But I don't know. I'm very hopeful that it's going to be good. But anyway, this isn't about 28 Months Later. Basically, 28 Weeks Later, I'd say it's worth a watch. If you enjoyed 28 Days Later, 28 Weeks Later is definitely worth a watch. It's not a bad movie. So anyway, thank you for watching. I don't know what my next video is going to be. I never do. But I did just get a capture card, so I might make some kind of Animal Crossing video or something. I know that's kind of a change of pace, but whatever. Thank you so much for watching. Feel free to tell me what you thought about what I said and what you think about the movie in the comments. And have a nice day. Don't forget to sub. Give me a like. Peace out.